Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Security Confidential. I'm your host, Rory Michael. With us today is Huxley Barbee. He is a security evangelist at runZero, formerly Rumble Network Discovery, a company founded by Metasploit creator H.D. Moore that helps companies discover unmanaged devices for asset inventory. Huxley previously worked for Cisco, Sparkpost, and most recently Datadog, where he formulated the Datadog Cloud Security Platform. He spent over 20 years as a software engineer and security consultant. He attended his first DEF CON in 1999 and holds both CISSP and CISM certifications. On top of that, he's also an organizer of BSidesNYC. Huxley, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Rory. Happy to be here.
How did you get from where you started in your career to where you're at now? What was kind of your road progression?
Yeah, there was a time in my career when all I ever wanted to do was just be in front of the screen.
Mm-hmm.
But as you get older, you mature, you gain more experience, you are called upon to do more than be hands-on keyboard. And as I sort of came out of my shell in terms of doing presentations and speaking with the public,
Mm-hmm.
my role naturally gravitated in this direction. I also ended up having more responsibilities in my job where I had go-to-market responsibilities.
Okay.
So as somebody who's leading a consulting practice at Cisco, there's a certain amount of public education that you have to do for the services that you provide. And so that was another thing that sort of propelled me in this direction. And happily, I enjoy what I'm doing here. Speaking on this podcast with you is part of that evangelism responsibility.
Right, absolutely. Bringing the information, more public, reaching more of an audience.
Yeah. And sometimes it's a more technical audience, sometimes it's less. So that's where the technical background comes in.
Okay. No, that's awesome. So proactive security, risk, and asset inventory. What is the connection between those three facets of security?
That is a good one. I would say the bedrock of any security program is asset inventory.
Okay.
And it's not something that I'm just saying and made up out of thin air, but if you look at the CIS critical security controls, right? That's control number one. If you look at NIST CSF, it's also one of the core components. But if you're going to go and protect something, you need to know about it,
right?
Plain and simple. So when you're talking about proactive security, you cannot be proactive without a good asset inventory. If when you are compromised, or if a device is compromised and your reaction is, "Oh, what is that?" then you're on the back foot. By definition, you can only be reactive. If when a device is compromised and your reaction is, or your question is, "I wonder who owns that thing. Like, what is the function or what is the value this device provides to our business?" then by definition, you're going to be reactive. A good asset inventory allows you to become proactive. I'm not saying that good asset inventory is sufficient for a proactive security program, but I'm saying it is necessary. Right? There may be other components, other tools or principles that you need to apply in order to have a proactive security program, but definitely asset inventory is a part of that. And the third part of your question, risk is all about management of that risk, right? Risk in a vacuum doesn't really mean anything. It's all about how you're managing that risk.
Right.
And risk management is necessarily a proactive activity. Like nobody's managing risk reactively. Like there's no such thing. When you're reacting, you're fighting fires and running around with like a chicken with his head cut off. Like that's not risk management. So if your goal is to manage risk, you need to have a proactive security program, and a bedrock component to that is good asset inventory.
Can you explain to us kind of what you see as the tooling that they think is doing a good job for them, and then what you bring to light as far as what they need to upgrade to?
Right. So funny enough, I often hear folks say that, oh, yeah, asset inventory is so important. It's great. And I have my EDR for that.
Mm.
Another one would be I have my vuln scanner for that. I've also heard, well, we have these things on spreadsheets. and I've also heard,
Classic.
I use a NAC for that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right. And well, and the fifth one would be CMDB.
Okay.
Right. But the fact of the matter is, none of those really solve the asset inventory problem. It might have 20 years ago. It might have 20 years ago when you and I were both sitting in an office every day, and as a security team member, your job is to protect the laptop or the server room, the servers in the server room.
Right.
But these days, that landscape has completely changed. Right? We have devices, maybe still in an office, but in our remote employees' homes, in the cloud. Our factories are now connected to the internet. We have all these smart devices, IoT devices that are on the network doing who knows what. And I just recently, there was one recent scan that we did where we found a photo frame connected to the network.
Wow.
Of all things. Right? So the things that we protect are not the things that we protected 20 years ago. And some of these other approaches that I just mentioned, the five, this tooling might have worked back in the day, 20 years ago, but it's completely unsuitable for the reality of most organizations today.
Right. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think the whole work from home and how advanced technology has become and integrated into every aspect of the business has obviously your asset inventory is going to have to change too, from a spreadsheet to something a little bit more intrusive, and it gives you more visibility into what's going on exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what kind of difference are there between IPv4 and IPv6 in gathering asset inventory data?
So part of this comes back to what is a cyber asset? So I'll just quickly define that.
Okay.
And cyber asset is different from an IT asset. A cyber asset is a compute device along with all the associated detail that security teams care about. Right? And this includes hardware, software, services, which ports they're listening on, security controls that are on there, user information like who the owner is, vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, and all that stuff. Right? Whereas an IT asset, it's a different set of concerns. There's some overlap here, of course. They also want to know about hardware and software, but on the IT side, you care about licensing, you care about replacement cost, right? And so that's something that I wouldn't consider to be part of a cyber asset. Right? Cyber asset is like the compute device plus what security people care about. IT devices, the compute asset plus what IT people care about. So one of the things I mentioned, one of the related details is services.
Right.
Okay. And this is where IPv4, IPv6 comes in. A lot of folks, when they do asset discovery, they assume that the attack surface on their devices is the same, whether it's V4 or V6.
Okay.
And that is not true.
Right.
That is absolutely not true. There's been many cases where we have found a particular device has a certain port blocked off or turned off on IPv4. It's not listening. But on IPv6 it is. Okay? Now, the adversary is going to be smart enough to be checking, like both on IPv4 and IPv6, to see whether or not there's something they can exploit, right? And depending on how your firewall is configured, and so on and so forth, like that is potentially another attack vector for the adversary. And so, when you're doing asset discovery and when you want a full asset inventory, full of all the details that you would expect from a cyber asset on cyber assets, you want to be checking both versions of IP,
right,
to understand the full picture of that particular device. So there's definitely some differences that you need to understand. Also, one of the challenges in having a full asset inventory is not just finding all those devices that you don't know about, that's not known to your EDR, that's not known to your vuln scanner, that's not known to your CMDB, but also the unknown subnets. because
Right.
it doesn't take a genius to just set up a new, private IP address range off of another NIC
Right.
on a laptop. And, when done wrong, or when allowed to organically fester, its potential that becomes now an open bridge that goes around a firewall. In some cases, these networks could potentially be IPv6 networks as well. And that's a much larger IP address range to do discovery on. Right? One of the biggest challenges in asset discovery is white space.
Okay.
When you have lots and lots of white space in a particular subnet, it takes a long time to iterate through those IP addresses to verify that there truly is nothing in there. And with IPv6, obviously there's way more addresses to go through. So it's highly challenging to do asset discovery in IPv6.
Okay. So then let's get into the meat and potatoes. I probably just say this whole conversation, but what are the processes and tools to achieve an accurate asset inventory count for both, your managed and your unmanaged, your cloud devices? I mean, what do people really need?
Right. So as you can imagine, I'm going to say it's not your EDR, your vuln scanner, and so on and so forth.
Right.
And I'll talk about why they're not good candidates,
Okay.
and then that sort of lays the groundwork for what I think is a good approach.
Okay.
So the thing with EDR, it's an agent, right? It's a piece of software that you put on a device. So if you can put software on a device, that means you know about it. Clearly, by definition, you know it. You know what it is. And that means more than likely you manage it. More than likely you're already protecting it. Like, this is not where your problem is going to be from a security defensive perspective, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So that's not a suitable thing when you're thinking about what has an outsized impact on your security posture, right?
Okay.
Which is where those unmanaged devices, right? The things that have been orphaned because Bob left the company and nobody's working on that box anymore, and therefore it's not up to date on its patches, it's not up to date on its version, and so on and so forth. It's the rogue devices, it's the shadow IT stuff, like that the developers started up in the cloud and never decommissioned. It's just sort of sitting there with an open S3 bucket, right? It's the unmanaged stuff that's really going to cause you a problem. And EDR is not going to find that for you.
Right.
They don't do that. So vuln scanners, the thing with vuln scanners is most of them, they do authenticated active scanning, meaning they're logging into as many devices as possible. They could also be using agents, of course, but if they don't have agents, they fall back to authenticated active scanning. And this goes back to the same thing. If you can log into a device, then you probably know it. You probably manage it. You probably are already protecting it. And as I said before, many folks that use vuln scanners, they're not even scanning everything.
Right.
So it's not giving you a complete picture of what is on your network. And so you're definitely going to be missing some of those unmanaged devices on those unknown networks. You could, I don't know how much I want to talk about spreadsheets, because I think it's pretty obvious that spreadsheets are not going to work.
Yeah.
CMDBs, they have discovery capabilities that also use authenticated active scanning. So very similar to a vuln scanner, it's not quite there. And more often than not, they're not catching like OT devices and IoT devices and things like this. It's just a weak point in those areas. And in fact, with both vuln scanners and CMDB, I would say that they oftentimes entirely avoid OT.
Okay.
Simply because they're afraid of crashing OT devices. Some of these OT devices are very prone to disruption. They will freeze up, they will reboot, they will shut down if they have arbitrary input over the network. Right. So if you think about it, these OT devices, they were programmed to respond to somebody pushing a button,
right,
or flipping a switch. Like, arbitrary input is not something that they were programmed to handle. Right? And of course, with EDR, you can't put software on an OT device or an IoT device. So that's just completely being missed by the EDR as well. So we go on to NACs. NACs are somewhat on their way out, I feel like. But there's still many companies that still have it. And they tend to identify the device that is trying to connect to the network.
Okay.
And they'll do like a rudimentary profiling of that device only for the sake of selecting the policy that they want to apply to that device. It's not really trying to do at scale discovery
Okay.
on the network. So it's not its job. Its job is not to go out there and find everything. In fact, the
Right.
matter is, when you start looking at OT environments, a lot of those MAC addresses of OT devices end up in some sort of MAC address bypass list
Mm-hmm.
just to get them on the network because they're not identifiable anyway. And then
Mm-hmm.
with all of these, particularly with CMDB and vuln scanners and
Right.
NACs, there tends to be really, really poor accuracy.
Okay.
Oftentimes, devices will just show up as Linux, right?
Doesn't surprise me.
Right, and like, does that help you?
No.
I mean,
No way.
because if this Linux device is an internet enabled coffee mug versus this Linux device is an IP camera that is, you know, videotaping your factory floor
Mm-hmm.
or the bank vault door,
Right.
right? It makes a difference to you as a security person. Like in one case, you don't care; it's a bad cup of coffee if it goes down. But in the other case, it's very material that the adversary might be able to surveil your facilities,
Yeah.
right? So the hardware matters. The software that's on there matters. You need to know these things. And these other tools, they just tend to not be able to tell
Lack of
anything
visibility.
beyond like the superficial identification of what is the operating system that's running here.
Right.
It you're not working with a full deck when you can't tell the difference between a network attached storage and an Android tablet. Right. So anyway, these are some of the things that folks say, "Oh, I think asset inventory is important, and I
Mm-hmm.
have my X that handles it for me."
Those are all X.
Yeah, those are all X, and in all cases, there's some shortcoming that it doesn't allow you to handle the realities of today. Right. Like I said,
Mm-hmm.
20 years ago, everything was a desktop or a laptop or
Right.
a server in the server room, like in a rack, all nice, with the cables all nicely laid out. But like these days, it just doesn't work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the things that you can do? Well, one interesting approach is to talk to all these other things that are in your tech stack, right? So you can go out there and you can use API integrations to pull data from multiple sources. And that gives you some picture of what is on your network, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the other part of it that is really important is the use of unauthenticated active scanning.
Okay.
Okay. So with unauthenticated active scanning, it means you're not trying to log into every single device as opposed to authenticated active scanning like a vuln scanner or CMDB
Right.
discovery module. And so you're not hampered by having to know something about the device beforehand. You're not limited to only the devices that are being managed, that are already being protected. It allows you to have a broader view of your network and go after all the things that are unmanaged as well. Now, unauthenticated active scanning in of itself is not going to be the full solution. You need to couple that scanning with the capability that essentially acts like a security researcher,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if I were just to do an unauthenticated active scan, I just like fire up Nmap and then boom, I get back a bunch of IPs. Here's some operating systems, and so on and so forth. What you need to be able to do is, as you are scanning, you are also trying to pull as much information from every single service that's running on that box,
Mm-hmm.
and also the network nodes among all these devices to get a full picture, where you're leveraging all the information you can get from layer 2 all the way up to layer 7 in order to come up with an accurate identification of what that thing is.
Okay.
Right? And when I say layer 7, I even mean like the web pages that are running over HTTPS on
Wow.
that box.
Okay.
I mean like even the
Full
little icon
picture.
on the corner of the browser tab there,
Mm-hmm.
that can be used as useful information for fingerprinting services. You're essentially acting like a security researcher or a pen tester, if you will.
Right.
You're going in there to try and identify what's on the network, get an accurate picture of what that is. Or to put it another way,
Mm-hmm.
if asset discovery is done right,
Mm-hmm.
it is no different than recon,
Right.
right?
Okay.
The best asset inventory is one that's developed when you are taking the view of the attacker, or you're going through the lens of the adversary, because they're doing the exact same process.
Right.
You need to do it too, and you don't want to be in a situation where the adversary knows more about your network than you do. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's a great point.
unauthenticated active scanning coupled with API integrations
Mm-hmm.
allows you to get that full picture of your
Okay.
network. It allows you to find out about IT devices, IoT devices, OT devices, and it doesn't matter where those devices are, whether that be in the office or in the cloud or in a remote employee's home.
Okay. Yeah, that's a lot better than a spreadsheet.
It's a lot better than a spreadsheet. It's a lot better than NAC for sure, and it's a lot better than EDR, Vuln Scanner, or CMDB.
As far as asset inventory, how does that tie into ransomware right now and the future of where you see ransomware going? How's asset inventory going to play a role in this conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say you're compromised,
Mm-hmm.
and the ransomware gang pops something up and say, "Hey, I've ransomed this data." If the security team says, "Oh, what is that device?" That's a problem.
Yep.
But if the security team can say, "Oh, yeah, that's that file server from 20 years ago that has files that we don't care about," okay, whatever. Go ahead,
Right.
ransom that. That's fine. But on the other hand, if they say, "Oh, this is the NAS that has all of our financial data," okay, this is important. Having good asset information allows you to make much better decisions about ransomware,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then more generally, some really good things that you could do with a full asset inventory is to proactively go out there and understand what are the misconfigurations and vulnerabilities on the device, and then close them out, remediate them.
Right.
Right. So, in both cases, good asset inventory can really help with ransomware. But in terms of where ransomware is going, I think it's going to continue,
Mm-hmm.
and it's purely economics, right? Some of
Yep.
the, I think I was reading a Verizon data breach incident report,
Okay.
and it said something like average ransomware was like $30,000, something like that, right? And if you think about it, like, okay, if for me to make a living like that, living in the United States, if I want to make a good living, I have to do 10 of those a year,
Right.
something like that. And so
To at
it's like,
least make it worth your time. Yeah.
yeah. And so you're like, yeah, probably not worth my time. Like I can just go do something else that's much less risky,
Right.
right? Not going to land me in jail. But if you think about what $30,000 per ransom means to somebody living in a different country,
Mm-hmm.
oh, it's a no-brainer. Like, of course I'm going to do that, right? It's good
Right.
money, and that jurisdiction is not going to come after me
Right.
over here, or it's much harder for that jurisdiction to come after me. So it's a no-brainer. This is going to continue. This is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And don't think that you are going to be exempt from this if you're a small business or what have you. It's
Yep.
$30,000, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
And
they don't need
at a
to go after
small
the
business,
big companies.
yeah, a
For
small
this.
business, 30,000 could make or break, payroll for the week.
Right. Exactly. Right. There's they the ransomware gangs scale by increasing the number of targets.
Mm-hmm.
And it can't be the biggest companies every single time. Why, anyway? Like, the
Right.
biggest companies have more security controls. It's going to be harder. It's a harder job, right? They do so much more by going after the smaller companies that don't have the security controls, right? And $30,000 is like a reasonable amount to be asking for.
Right.
So, if anything, I feel like small businesses are at higher risk for ransomware than larger companies.
Yeah, I would totally agree. Lack of skill, lack of knowledge, and then lack of physical and software assets to not just asset inventory but security tools across the board. You just don't find them.
And if 30K is the threshold, that means there's a large pool of small companies to go after.
Mm-hmm.
So
wow.
It's just going to get worse.
I hate to.
Side.
Right. Awesome. Well, if people want to, reach out to you, get in contact with you, what is the best place to do that? LinkedIn?
So you could just search for Huxley Barbee.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm the only Huxley Barbee you're ever going to meet. And I'm active on LinkedIn, Twitter, as well as Mastodon. I'm on the infosec.exchange instance. It's HUXLEY, and last name is BARBEE, 2 E's.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll have Emily make sure she links all that stuff, and we'll link the BSidesNYC as well. So if any of the listeners here want to get info on when that's coming up next and get in touch with Huxley, have all that stuff right there.
Sure. Or if you just want to email me, you can email me at huxley@runZero.com. That's RUNZERO.com.
Perfect.
But, connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter or Mastodon as well.